popularity risk for the programme. The camera lingered on her longer than she wanted. Hungover Paul had been a bit of a minimalist today, so she found herself adding that these were the shapes and scents that had first inspired her love of gardening, in a little paradise created by her expat grandmother in southern Spain. They wanted to film the 4 presenters on their break, when they'd all rather be discussing their holiday plans, so the director suggested a follow-on from what Andie had said about the garden that first inspired her. Paul's inspiration had been Kew Gardens. Johnny couldn't decide between his parents' nursery or the National Trust place near his family home in County Down, and Steve's had been his father's prize-winning allotment. It made for an untypically heartfelt bit of footage. Then the spell was broken by the usual ludicrous nick-of-time finishing of the garden and champagne celebration with the owner. It was over. There were hugs and backslaps all round. Andie smiled and fought off inexplicable tears. Johnny's arms came around her. Everybody on set knew about them. It was staggering their relationship hadn't yet reached a newspaper. Andie, no way will they not have you back in the spring, he whispered, kissing her cheek. And meanwhile, we have so much to look forward to. I'll see you later, my gorgeous. Got a dash to pick up the girls. She smiled. But did she want to be back in the spring, playing garden clown? Being interviewed about nothing very much for women's magazines and radio programmes? Trying not to look at the curdling stream of adoration and hatred coming at her from Twitter? Johnny, and finances aside, maybe she'd been happier when she was working full-time for Gerard at Summerby Garden Designs. But her agent said she needed at least 2 seasons there to become more established professionally, and the cheeky cow had reminded her, romantically. Romantically, she was looking forward to the little holiday she and Johnny had talked about. She sometimes spent a weekend at his rambling place in a quiet street in Richmond, sleeping in what he promised had always been his room, not theirs. But the rooms that bothered her were those of Lilac and Jasmine, his 2 little girls, 8 and 4, whom she and Caroline's lover weren't allowed to meet. Yet, Johnny would always add without being clear as to what exactly would change this rule. Meanwhile, there were photos everywhere of those 2 little blondies she felt she already knew, and she'd admired the Grade 1 piano with merit certificate and Lilac's Harry Potter bedroom, stood up some knocked-over plastic animals on the shelf next to Jazzy's little pink bed. What harm could possibly come from her meeting them? Andie pondered this as she crawled along the A316, past the turning that would later take her to Johnny's and onwards to her garden flat in Teddington, where, by the time she'd found somewhere to park, had a bath and changed clothes, it would be time to crawl back along the A316 to get to his place no earlier than 6. All to avoid the girls before Caroline picked them up for the weekend. She wasn't even allowed 2 hours in their presence, it seemed, even though she could surely just be introduced as one of Daddy's work friends dropping by for a cup of tea. Once finally home, she was in no mood to rush out again, strung out by her mixed feelings about the show and the thought of a second helping of the manic traffic. She started running the bath and considered messaging Johnny that she would be arriving no earlier than 8. Once up to her neck in Radox bubbles, hair happily released from the top knot and floating around her, she considered telling him she'd be there no earlier than tomorrow. She could call her friend Shafali back about when they were going to try the new ballet and flamenco classes, so they could decide which they were going to book for September. Curl up on the sofa with some porridge and a film. Relax. Re-revel. But the family of plastic ducks Johnny had given her had joined her in the bath, and his maidenhair fern on the windowsill looked at her forlornly, as would the bedroom's soft toy robin who sang authentically if you pressed his tummy. Then there was the holiday to decide on. "Where are you all going?" she asked the traffic as it honked and rushed around her. Shouldn't they be coming out of London for the weekend rather than into it? Her phone had peeled 2 WhatsApps, but there wasn't a prayer of pulling over and answering it.